We need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. We are now in open session. Are there any considerations on the order of business tonight? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed. Public appearances. I see none. Okay.
No one brave the weather?
No, yeah, right. Crazy. All right, that takes us to consideration of the consent agenda, and it is a full one. We have a motion to,
Do you want to single out one
Well, that-
retiree, or do we do that after we go?
You can do it.
After,
Yeah.
okay. Then I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
thank you, we need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor for approval of the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay. Oops.
Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right, that brings us to recognitions.
Okay, I'd like to begin. One of the retirement you just approved in the consent agenda, Pat Dorn, high school and GDS band teacher, just like many of our teachers, someone that we absolutely are going to miss. He's just a tremendous asset to the district, and had an opportunity, and then was a little bit late to put in for retirement, and we certainly wish Pat the best, and we're going to miss him deeply. So.
Yes. Patrick, my kids, and for a long time, did a great job, and it is with, great regret that
Yeah.
he accepted his resignation.
So he also had nine
Absolutely.
His
kids.
retirement,
So
sorry.
he had all our kids, so he spanned in an amazing way. He was a great advocate for the department and great with kids.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That takes us to item I, correspondence and announcements.
Did we do recommendations?
That was for Pat, I believe.
Yep.
Oh, there was this other note about the RTI center.
Pat got accidentally carried over from last meeting.
That was listed, wasn't it?
Okay. You're right, now that I remember that. Paid attention. See, I read what you put in there.
All right, that'll take us to item J, administrative reports, and our superintendent.
Actually, I have no specific report for this evening.
All right, thank you. That'll take us to item K, board reports. And the first up will be our Community Engagement, Communications, and Government Relations Committee Chair, Carrie Robbins.
Yeah, so I'm excited to share with the rest of the board that we had our first official committee meeting. Susan Fox is newly joining me on that committee. And delighted, absolutely delighted with the public response to the advertisement that we placed at soliciting non-board members to join the committee. Now, Jeff had started that conversation last year about how we could get the process going, and so under his leadership as chair, we started how could we do this and what would be the guiding principles, and so we got an announcement posted prior to this committee coming on board, and we had a very large turnout of people interested. So the committee's work at our first meeting was to come up with a way to look at all these candidates and start the discussion about who we could select. And so at this point where that stands is we had consensus in our small group about how we wanted to approach that, and I have forwarded to Jennifer for her consideration the list of people we'd like to appoint. So pending her review and approval, we'll be able to get back to the people who applied. And unfortunately also get back to some of the people who applied, but we just couldn't take everybody because there were so many. So that was a great outcome, and it just, I think, a wonderful example of the interest that our community has of participating in things related to our schools. And so I'm super excited. And we also at our first committee meeting drafted our agenda for the next one, which is going to be how we could onboard people who haven't been part of these kinds of dealings before, what kind of training, orientation they might need. Jared, we were thinking about some of the things similar to what you do at the annual meeting, to like just kind of give an overview of the district. What are those kinds of framing things that new people who want to be active on the committee, what might they need? And then we also drafted our list of meetings for the 2017-18 year. So that's also something that we'll share with the new people as we bring them on, so they have a little sense of what they're in for if they agree to accept their appointment. Hopefully they haven't changed their mind between the time they applied and the time we get back to them, but I'm very excited about that. And in other business, we also had an opportunity to start thinking more seriously about something you'll see later, or maybe already noticed on our agenda for tonight, which is a response, a proactive involvement with other legislative action being taken right now. So Susan very graciously already drafted the resolution, and that'll come up later tonight in board business, but I feel like we are already getting stuff done in there, man. So I'm excited about it.
So could I just ask one clarification? So the letter has been written to the people who are going to be?
Right now, I owe Joyce the letter
Oh,
for
okay.
distribution. I
Okay.
haven't finished it.
Okay.
And,
And then it'll go with both your signatures.
and as soon as we have an opportunity to connect about it, hopefully, I mean, goal would be to get it out within the next week. I was still kind of hoping for this week even, before the 4th of July. But I'm sometimes more ambitious than what we can actually do, so
Right.
certainly soon. We told them at the time that they applied that they'd be notified by mid-July, so we're well ahead of what we advertised, but nothing like trying to beat those expectations, so if we can get it out within the next few days, I think that would be really good.
Okay.
I mean, I know notifications from the school board on 4th of July. I'm competing with some other
Right.
types of activities people might be doing, but if we can get their attention on it, we will ask them to respond by July 17th, so that the next time we meet as a committee, you and I,
Right.
we will have already known who responded and who we are
Sounds good.
solidly onboarding.
They'll come in with my low student food bills, calls.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we're competing with some other things on the holiday weekend, but I hope they're excited to get their appointment letters, and
I was impressed how many people applied.
I am too. I think it's a good validation of what we thought, that there would be interest.
It was also nice that it was kind of equal numbers from both communities, and
Yes.
it was, the whole thing was it's very positive, really good.
All right, thank you. And our other board report, Policy Committee with Chair Susan Fox.
We met on June 22nd and reviewed all of the Neola updates from December for this year, and we actually got through all of them, and they are on your agenda tonight for our first reading. We really only made a few modifications, occasionally some grammar, sometimes some wording, but basically they're all approved. And the amazing news is we're totally caught up with policies for now. We know that there are some more updates either here already or coming. But we don't even have a meeting scheduled because we need to wait until Dan gets those and has a chance to meet with the Neola rep, and then has a chance to get input from whatever administrators need input on whatever those policies are. So, we won't be meeting for at least a couple of months, it looks like, so we're in good shape. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. That takes us to item L, possible action items, and the first is a 2017-2018 preliminary budget.
All right, at the last board meeting, it was running late and we went through the budget fairly quickly, but I don't want to necessarily recap everything I said. So I just want to point out a few things about the preliminary budget that is before you tonight. So our fiscal year ends here on June 30th, and so the new one starts on July 1. That's part of the reason that the board actually has to take action of approving a preliminary budget, so we can pay the ongoing expenditures that occur from now until the board actually approves the final budget when we receive our final numbers in October. We will be having our annual meeting budget hearing on October 4th, and that will set the motion for the final approval of the budget at the end of October. Some timelines, our third Friday count, which is in September, we receive our final equalization aid numbers from the state on the 15th of October. And then based on those two numbers, along with our property values that come out on October 1st, we'll be able to set our levies on our different funds, Fund 10, 38, 39, and Fund 80. So right now, if you've been following the news and the state budget biennium also begins on July 1. And as of right now, the Joint Finance Committee for the budget, they have not met as a whole. They have not made the recommendation for a state budget to both the Assembly nor the Senate. Sounds like they've sort of stalled out the conversation. So The budget's built off the governor's recommendation, and, we are seeing both the Senate and the Assembly throwing out different ideas and stuff like that. But for the purposes of building the budget, we had to get our numbers out to our buildings based on the state budget, or what we were anticipating the state budget, along with enrollment. So if, for example, the Assembly education bill or proposal to the budget is taken up and put in place of the governor's budget, we would anticipate seeing a reduction of about $160,000 than what we would have saw with the governor's budget. By any means, it doesn't bring us back to where we were at, and that was part of the reason that we had to go to an operational referendum of the $2.5 million. And but ultimately, when you look at page 6, that is our enrollment projections. For the purposes of our revenue limits, we are projecting an increase of 80 resident students over the 16-17 current enrollment. And then on page 7, I show you where we're at with our revenue projections. As a reminder, our revenue limit projections, the revenue limit is actually the amount of money the district is able to collect through property taxes and equalization aid. So it really takes our total resident number based on the third Friday count, multiply it by our base dollar amount. And right now, the state budget does not have an increase per pupil in the revenue limit. It's coming through as per pupil aid, which has been something that we've seen for the last couple of years. So the revenue limit side of things is only increasing if we really physically see growth in our resident students. You'll see that realistically, when we look at a revenue limit, this year our total revenue limit was $35,291,299, and for next year we are proposing a revenue limit of $35,915,215. So it's not a large increase on the side of the revenue limit. But part of that takes into place is the 80 resident enrollments, $0 for a pupil increase. We have our phase 2 and 3 energy debt payments that are on the revenue limit, and then we have our $2.6 million operational referendum. Right now, we're unsure of where the state budget is going to fall with state aid, so we're just using the same dollar amount that we received this year. So based on that, we're anticipating a zero increase in state aid, equalization aid. And when I talk about equalization aid, if we do happen to get an increase in equalization aid, it does not give us additional funds. What it does is it lowers the amount that is passed on to our property taxpayers. When we hear $200 or $405 increase per pupil, that's coming on the categorical side or a per pupil aid. So that's outside the revenue limit. So what the concern comes for our budget is that per pupil amount has to always stay in the budgets, where once it was put on the revenue limit, unless there was a physical, a bill that was passed or in the budget that reduced the revenue limit, those were always ongoing. It was a base building, where the per pupil is not base building unless they physically put it in there. So what that represents is a 1.77% over the 2016-17 of about $624,000. When we look at property tax, property values, we are looking at a estimated 3%. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a little larger growth, but we also don't want to send a false hope of what our levy or mill rate's going to be. So we're being a little bit on the conservative side, projecting what our property values are going to look like. That doesn't have any negative impact to our budget. If we are at a 3% or a 4%, what that does is it just gives it the total dollars that spread out our total levy. And then if you go to page 8, it's the projected property tax levy. And what we're projecting for next year with estimated numbers when we look at state equalization aid, our resident enrollments, along with our current debt schedule, we are anticipating a 2.54% increase in our property tax levy from the year before. We're looking in Fund 10 of seeing about $22,317,000. Fund 38, which is a non-referendum debt service, which is $602,000. And then Fund 39 is the referendum debt service, which is not the operational referendum, because that's part of the Fund 10 general fund, but this is debt service that would have been issued through referendum to build our buildings through refinancing and remodeling and additions. And then Fund 80, which is our community service funds, we have $350,500. So that's where we get the total levy of $28,197,842, which represents that 2.54%. Those numbers, I can tell you, will most likely change for sure based on enrollment along with equalization aid. And if, obviously, everybody is always curious about what our projected mill rate's going to be. Like I said, this is going to change, but last year we were a projected mill rate of $13.89, and with this, based on our property tax or our valuations along with our resident growth, we're looking at a $13.82. So a small decrease on the mill rate, but those dollars will definitely change based on our equalization aid payments that we receive and growth in the district. And the remaining part of it just walks through each of the funds. Fund 10, general fund, where you can see we are anticipating a total revenue of $40,411,000. And on the expenditure side, we're meeting that as well. So that incorporates the teacher compensation plan along with salary increases along in the hiring of our replacement staff along with the new staffing plan that we put in place. Fund 27 is where we are seeing an increase as well. Part of that is because Fund 27 is our special education fund. There cannot be a fund balance or a deficit there, so we transfer money from Fund 10 over to 27. We're anticipating a budget there of $6,174,000. We are going to see a little larger transfer in this budget compared to previous years. Part of that is that we have not seen an increase in the state categorical aid. Previous years we were at 28%. This past year we're at 26%. We don't see anything in the state budget that increases that as well. And then on top of that, the federal budget, where we get federal grants for IDEA for flow-through and early childhood, we're anticipating seeing a reduction there as well. So, which happens, and when we don't get additional aid or federal grant money for that, it just pushes those remaining funds from Fund 10 to cover that cost. Then throughout the other package, it just talks about Fund 38 and 39. It shows you the debt service, what debt's remaining, what the total principal is remaining, along with interest. Then Fund 50 is our school nutrition program, which for the last number of years we have been self-sufficient, which means that there's no transfer from Fund 10 over to Fund 50, and they're able to actually upgrade equipment on an annual basis as well. And then Fund 80 is our community service fund, and that is something that is outside of the revenue limit. This is really, when you look at prior to revenue limits being in place, this is really how our budgets and what the board's powers used to be able to do, is to set this dollar amount based on the actual need. So in Fund 80, it's not based on residents, it's not based on property values. What we do is we take a look at the revenues that are coming in through fees, through the swim pool, through facility usage, and then identify the expenditures and what's the difference, what's passed along to on the revenue limit side of things. And how we fund some of those is our aquatic center. We also custodial salaries and benefits associated with the community use of the facilities. It helps us fund the auditorium for communities when we bring in outside groups that need lighting, sound, and we're able to provide some opportunities. This is the first full year of doing summer camps, so our athletic department and some other departments throughout the district, in addition to summer school, which is part of Fund 10, been able to offer camps for our youth in our community. And that's funded completely through Fund 80 because it's open to everybody in the district, not just residents, but also outside communities. And then we also have our SRO officer and our partnership with the community cable part of things. And then I just have included in here the fee schedule that was approved by the board back in April, along with some additional information on the levies for debt service for both Fund 38 and 39. So the next step for us is we will continue to work through the summer. Our buildings have been giving their allocation. We're fully fledged in staffing and hiring right now. So you asked the question, what happens if the state budget changes from what was proposed by the governor? We have district budgets that have not been fully implemented yet, along with some savings that we've obviously worked through on negotiating different contracts. Some of those contracts will help pay for additional areas of the budget, but we will continue to update the board as we go. The next number that will come in for the district is on July 1st, or shortly after the 1st, we'll get our first estimates of what we're going to get from the DPI for equalization aid. Now, obviously, if the state budget's not passed or no proposals are put on the public, it'll be very difficult for DPI to even give us an accurate information. So that will be the next number that comes out, and we'll continue to update the board. And for sure, you'll get another presentation of the budget in September prior to us putting together the annual meeting budgets, so you're aware of where we're at for final approval in October.
Can I just ask, relative to your comment about the IDEA and flow-through money possibly being reduced, do you have a ballpark, well, it's probably hard to tell, but as far as the Medicaid reductions, that would be do we have a substantial amount of billing through Medicaid? I mean, I know that varies.
We actually have been working very hard at that over the last number of years, and so that number has been great in increasing for us.
Right.
So I haven't taken a deep look at what that is. Some other districts are seeing significant reductions due to the fact that they have had worked very hard and had a system in place a while ago. So
Okay.
they're, but we receive close to $300,000 to $400,000 on an annual basis for Medicare, and now that fluctuates on an annual basis because it is. The billing, when it goes in, it can be on a timely basis, but payments coming back is not always on a timely basis.
Right.
And they always seem like they're doing audits every other month, and that delays things, so.
And
So-
because it's actually reimbursement for actual expenses,
Yep.
it depends on the kids you have too. right?
Yes.
So it's-
And part of that too is, we might, each of our student services that are offering some of those services that are billable, those parents also have to sign off on allowing us to bill. We can't just automatically bill Medicare, so that we don't always get 100% sign off on that as well. So even though we try, a lot of it is the education and student services does a great job of trying to help families understand that, but.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, thank you. That takes us to our policies for consideration of action.
We have to approve this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, do you want a motion?
I would, well,
There's, I'm sorry, there's
No.
a correction.
Oh, okay.
a correction.
You can do the correction first.
Well,
Okay.
what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make a motion, if I may, with the correction.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
I would like to
That's-
I'd like to move approval of the budget as presented, except with the correction on page 3 that my community of residents be updated appropriately.
Would you like that change?
Oh, wow.
See, we read these things.
Yes, I appreciate it. I throw these things in just to make sure everybody's on.
So, I just made a motion.
Interesting.
I totally skipped right
I
by
thought
it.
you moved.
I made a motion.
Peter made a motion to have his address corrected. We need a
No,
second.
No,
I
no.
made a
We're
motion for
good.
approval with the correction.
Approval.
As presented with the correction.
I'll
with the
second.
correction.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'd like to amend that, that Peter actually has the money back.
Fails for lack of a second.
No, we got our second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No, you didn't ask for debate, but that's okay.
I felt we had some, but perhaps we could have more.
We're good.
All right, the motion carries. Deep breath. Okay. Now, that takes us to revised board policies, and I'd be happy to read, or if you'd like to make the motion, we can.
And this is
Either way.
a second read, so I don't make the motion. Can we approve these all at once?
Yes.
I assume that, we haven't heard any concerns about them, so. I move approval of revised board policy 0100 definitions, 1221 job description superintendent, 6152 student fees, fines and charges, 7540 technology, 7540.01 technology privacy, 7540.02 web content services and apps, and 8500 school nutrition services as presented.
Thank you. We need a second. Thank you, Dean. Discussion? That'll take us to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to our third item under action items, which is the PERMAR Security and Safety Monitoring Contract.
All right, we are asking for approval of a PERMAR Security and Safety Monitoring Contract. A little background about that is that our current contract with our current vendor Honeywell ends effective June 30th. We went out to bid, got some quotes, and we were able to negotiate a significant savings with PERMAR. What's interesting about PERMAR is actually Honeywell has subcontracted with PERMAR to do all of our screening and security anyway. So what we're really doing is we're just removing the middleman. And so we are recommending that we have an approval of a 5-year contract. The first 3 years are locked in rates, so we will see a 0% increase. And then year 4 and 5, it's locked in to be no more than a 2% increase. Doesn't mean it has to be 2%, which this does give the district a savings of approximately, when I say significant, about $30,000 on an annual basis. So what they will do is they will work with the district on our safety and security equipment, such as fire alarms, cameras, and door access panels. And we don't necessarily need to replace any of our current stuff because they've already been using it. So a couple years ago, we did switch from Stanley over to Honeywell. And then we're now just making the switch from Honeywell to PERMAR.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Peter?
Just a quick question,
Sure.
Peter. Our fire alarm, smoke detectors, so on, what's the testing interval for those? You happen to know?
They actually test them on a monthly basis.
They test the whole thing on the front?
Yes. So every building goes through a fire alarm inspection along with the actual alarm. And we monitor whichever building is being tested that month. Every building is being tested, making sure evacuation plans are written. And then actually on a biannual basis, they come through and do the smoke detector test.
And that is managed by PERMAR then?
So,
Circumstances?
Honeywell would have specifically were the ones that were in our building, but the actual monitoring, so if there was an alarm situation or a fire, the fire alarms actually were called into PERMAR. PERMAR would either dispatch the fire department or the police department, so.
All right, thank you. I
I'd
move
like to
approval.
move approval of the PERMAR Security and Safety Monitoring Contract as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
I guess the only thing I would add is thank you for renegotiating that and saving us some money here.
No problem.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries. That contract is approved. That takes us to resolution for membership in the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative, 66.0301, and that agreement.
All right. So currently, we are asking to become part of the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative. This is a new cooperative that's being formed. Previously, we were part of, and actually for the next year, we still will be part of the CISA 2 School Nutrition Purchasing program. However, there are over 60 school districts that have been able to join forces to develop this cooperative. A number around the Madison area, Dane County, for example, Madison Cross Plains, McFarland. But what it really does is it gives us a buying powers, and then being able to go out and negotiate those food costs lower, along with getting additional rebates. Part of the concerns that really there was no major concerns with CISA other than being able to become our own cooperative and having a membership larger than just the CISA. We felt was beneficial. In addition to that, there were some changes within the CISAs, based on some changes that happened with the state budget in the past, where more CISAs are becoming We're specializing in different areas, so what we were finding is not that we didn't want other schools across the state to join, but when you're transferring perishable foods, like when we start having 1 or 2 school districts from northern Wisconsin joining the CISA 2 one, what we were finding is our transportation costs that we were all part of was starting to increase, and so we really are focusing this to be more of a, a southeastern or south central side of things, and then there might be an add-on for a northern part, but instead of it just being encompassed all in one. So that is our recommendation.
Jared, when you said we'll continue to be with CISA for the next year, is that simply because we have a contract? Or
So part of this is this cooperative is starting to form new, and there's a lot of USDA requirements on bidding processes, procurements. Along with it, next year is being our year of review by DPI and our food service. So we didn't want to necessarily go to a new cooperative and find that we've missed something, so we're gonna participate in both. And this cost for us to be part of the cooperative is $300, and the CISA agreement that you approved actually at the last board meeting, part of that contract, is $450. So in the long run, it will be cheaper. However, we feel that the $750 that are gonna be spent this year safeguards us in multiple different manners, that we continue to stay in the contracts. But then also, this is becoming, I don't wanna say a last minute, but a number of districts are starting to adopt these now, and we had committed to CISA, so we wanna respect that because of our partnership with CISA as well.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to approve the contract?
Move approval of the resolution for membership in the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchase Cooperative as presented.
Thank you. Thank you. Discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries for the Wisconsin School Nutrition Purchasing Cooperative. Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our next item, the Dane County School to Career Consortium Director Compensation for 2017-2018.
Just, hopefully the executive summary is fairly self-explanatory, but just as a reminder, we are the fiscal agent for the Dane County School Consortium. Therefore, everyone that's employed there are technically our employees, and we have an oversight committee, and so the recommendations before you for the director salary for next year.
Susan,
I would move approval of the 2017-2018 Dane County School to Career Consortium Director compensation as presented.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All right, we will vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion carries to approve our Dane County School to Career Consortium Director compensation. Thank you. All right. And that takes us to our item here to, our resolution. And let me get all the language correct. Our resolution opposing potential legislation regarding guns on school grounds.
And I would just note that, I'm assuming everybody had time to read the executive summary. Yeah, this came up because of a specific bill, SB 169, but I haven't been able to find out what the exact status of that bill is. There was a huge turnout at the hearing, a lot of testimony, and I got the strong feeling from the committee that they were going to go back to the drawing board a little bit. I'm not sure in what direction. But this resolution is more general. It's not directed just at that bill, because it may come back in a different form. There may be another bill. There was also an assembly bill at one point. So this is just really stating more general principles, and honestly, it's pretty much the same as Milton Cross Plains had one like this, Appleton had one like this. I left some of the verbiage out because I didn't think it was necessary, and added one piece in, I think. But it's just a general statement of where we stand on not wanting more guns in schools, and when we get more advice on where. I did send an email to WSB to see what they knew, and I think they're so ensconced in the budget, they haven't had time to really get back on this, because this is not on the hot burner right now. Could be next week, but not right now. So,
Yes,
I'd like to
Carrie.
move approval of this resolution as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Thank you for doing the background homework on this.
Sure.
Awesome.
I think it's really great that we're doing this. I appreciate that the committee is doing this. I know Jeff and Susan and I were all at the hearing, and we couldn't even get into the major room.
Right.
So I think my only question is, I don't know that we have a good feel for what you're gonna do with the resolution.
oh,
So, it doesn't matter to me, you can just report out later.
The last one that we did was shared with our own legislators, and I don't know, the
It would
question
tip-
that you're raising
yeah.
is a good one about, would we like to also publish?
Mhm.
I mean, obviously with the minutes of this, it's captured, but were you thinking that maybe we
We
would?
might also wanna send to the authors of the bill.
well, that's what I was thinking. I was, and I
There's probably-
neglected to mention that. I was assuming it would go to our representatives and then also to the members of the committee for SB one sixty.
WSB.
And we always send copies to WSB, yeah. That's
How about
kind of
Harold?
automatic.
Harold?
That's
Yeah.
what I was wondering,
Yeah.
when it's public.
We could, I hadn't thought about doing that, but
Yeah,
we certainly could.
I have a whole list
Yeah.
of media that I sent it to.
Right, yeah.
Great,
Oh,
okay.
Great.
Great.
That's,
We
that's
had to
great.
sit in a room that was full, and they were cranking the heat, and the,
Here.
the TV that they showed us wasn't synced with the voices, so it was,
And you guys got there pretty shortly after they started, because you got there a little before I did. I didn't get there that fast.
I was there at the beginning.
Right, so
Wow.
it was packed. It was
from
pretty.
now on, I'm gonna
it was quite
register as an NRA lobbyist, then I'll get first one for
packed.
them.
Right. And I actually went preparing to testify, but it was gonna be a couple hours, and then as I listened, I wanted to make some changes, so I actually drove home, made changes in testimony, came back and submitted it. I'm not, I just, because I just got a copy of it, and mine wasn't in there, so I don't know how that worked. But anyway, they told me it would still be yet another 2 hours into the afternoon for me to actually speak, so I just submitted it instead, because we had a meeting that night, and that's how it is. But it's good to see the turnout on these, and I think they were listening. I mean, they were asking questions, and so, you know, we'll see where it goes, but.
Thank you for doing it. Thank you, I appreciate it.
I would comment that schools are the safest place in the country for children today.
Doggone.
And a good part of that is because they are by and large countries.
Right.
Because accident or deliberate death by, with a firearm is one of the leading causes of death for children.
They said it's well written, but I'd be fine with absolutely not.
Right.
All right, thank you. Anything further?
That's nice that that we're doing this. I mean, this is an important step for us to be doing
Agreed. All right, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion for the resolution carries. Thank you.
And can we note in the minutes that the vote was unanimous? I just think this
Sure.
is,
Sure.
just a request.
That's great. So for the next section, M, in our discussion items, we have a lengthy list of first read policies. And I'm gonna defer to our policy committee chair if there's any particular order or consideration process. Or if we should just go with questions.
I would just say, first of all, that the title is just because that's how it was titled when it came from Neola, for, new revised deleted policies. There are no deleted, we're not deleting.
Thank you.
Well, let's see.
I think there's.
There is
There's
one, there
one,
is one
yeah,
deletion.
there's
Yep, there is
There
one,
is.
so never mind.
Okay.
So, rather than go through the whole list, I guess, again, I assume that when they're here, people have a chance to look through them, and I would just ask if anyone has any questions on them, and I could try to answer them, but they're generally these, most of these updates are due to legislative changes. Some then, while they're doing legislative changes, they'll see other cleanups they think are advisable, and we do always do the same process. We don't automatically adopt all of their suggestions. Some, they come with options. Dan meets with the Neola rep, and then also gets input from appropriate administrative team members on the policies, that apply to that are under their review. So there is a lot of review that goes into it before it comes to the policy committee, and then we went through it again and made sure we understood why we were doing what we were doing. And did you get an answer on that one? No?
I got a response, and he wanted, if the follow-up was, he believes it needs to be there, but he wanted to check and be accurate as to why, and I
Okay,
haven't
so
heard
we'll
back
leave
from
it
that
there,
yet.
we'll leave it the way it is for first
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah.
Fine. All right, so, any questions, Carrie?
I just had one kind of weird thing, which is I noticed that there's a policy here, 1460,
Mhm.
physical examination.
Right.
And there's also policy
Oh.
4160, physical examination.
That's because they're in different sections.
Okay.
1460 is in the administrative section, and then the 3160 applies to professional staff,
Oh, yeah.
and the other one is, support staff.
Oh, that has to do with the new
So
numbering
they all-
of the
they all
different
pretty much
sections
say the
having
same
the, okay,
thing.
I was
Yeah.
trying to
Okay.
remember
Yeah, it's
why
weird.
we had the
Yeah,
same,
yeah.
what appears to be titled the
It
same
is a little weird,
policy
but yeah,
also.
yeah.
Because I just wondered about, my confusion looking at the list could be someone else's confusion of how we run into like quoting the correct policy.
Except they would be looking in the appropriate section. If you're support staff, you're gonna look at 4160. If you're a teacher, you're gonna look at whatever.
Because I would hate for some discipline action to be misunderstood because of having the wrong policy
yeah.
quoted or something. And so we don't title them like, I
They're
don't know,
all pretty
policy
much
name
this-
/ staff employee type or policy name / faculty type or something like that because
Well,
there's just a little weirdness to that.
In the manual, that it is on the header
Okay,
of what it is, and basically the provisions are the same pretty much, I think. So it shouldn't be an issue anyway. It does look confusing when you see them all on a list like this.
Oh, we could have, one of the things we could do, if it would be helpful next time, is to put those in category. So for instance, 0151.2 is bylaws. Is that what you're, so?
I just wanted to make sure they weren't duplicated or that they weren't like,
Yeah.
Somehow the same policy appearing in 3 places could be
Right.
confusing to somebody, so.
Yeah, no, it isn't when you see it in the whole manual and you get used to looking in your appropriate part of the manual. It's just weird when you see it like
Well,
this.
and there are some sections, 3000s and 4000s, and is there another one? Where some of the policies are exactly the same policy, or they're almost exactly the same policy, and then there's a word or two that's different. But it might, if we just started routinely categorizing them that way, I
Well,
think then.
I can figure it out. There's no need to go to extra work on that.
Okay.
I understand why, and thank you for
Yeah.
that suggestion, but I don't wanna put you to more work. I was just wanting to raise it tonight to go, okay, I was double checking the list, and I was like, wait a minute, isn't this the same? So,
And I think of the way this also works is that, this is just here for first read tonight, but when we approve them, they go into a folder and they need to be in this order because then when Neola gets them, that's how they approach it, so.
yeah.
We kinda need to do it this way. It's a good question,
Yep.
but it is more clear if you look at the whole manual. It's just strange this way.
So the only thing I was talking about was, so for instance, when you were looking at 3000s, you would know that those were changes to professional staff.
Right, so you pull
Yeah,
the header there.
when you click through
We
to
could
where they
type
are
it.
in the actual manual, it's gonna be more.
4000 is support staff, so.
Right, right.
Cool, that was the only thing I was wondering about.
Peter?
Something odd, I was looking at 5780, the student parent rights one, and one of the added languages is a student who is still dependent for federal tax purposes, but who has reached the age of majority may, by written request, restrict his or her parent's access to personally identifiable information, et cetera.
Law.
Why is that, yeah, but why does that apply only to students who are dependents for federal tax purposes? You'd think it would apply more so for students who are no longer dependents. I don't understand why the language limits it to only students who are still dependents. It doesn't make sense to me.
When
Right.
they're not, yeah, I would assume that that's when the issue comes up. They're living in your house, they're your dependent, but they're 18.
Right?
You might expect to see their records and you can't if they choose not to let you and they go through this process.
That's right.
Whereas,
If
they
they're not,
might not
if
be a
they're,
dependent,
if they're
then
not,
it's not an issue, I guess, because then you're not a guardian, you're not, if they're not your dependent,
no.
notices aren't coming to you if they're
I can
of
still be-
age of majority
No,
and you're,
the tax and,
oh, as far as tax.
this is
structure, right,
tax.
Right,
That's
I know.
tax purposes. It just doesn't make sense to me that it's limited to only
Yeah.
those who are dependents for tax purposes. It just doesn't. And maybe there's some other part of the law or something, but
yeah, we could certainly ask
it
that
seems
question.
odd.
Joyce?
I just looked up, there's description, I don't know if this is helpful.
Yeah, that's
There's
what I was gonna say.
explanation, 5680. The policy is offered to clarify the requirements of adult students that wish to restrict access to their student records by their parents
Yeah.
and to simplify. So it's
No.
like a law, is that
But-
helpful or not? I just, I know,
Yeah,
I
it's just a
heard your question,
restatement,
but,
it's state restatement, but why does it only apply to
Yeah, I don't
students who
know.
are still dependents?
That's by far the most common, I guess. I don't know.
I agree.
We could ask that question, yeah.
I agree, it's
Right.
absolutely the most common, but
Right.
I
I'm guessing it may have to do with how the law is written. I mean, we, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. I understand what you're saying, and I don't know what the answer to that is.
I had just a few kind of informational questions, for policy 2370, the educational options that we need to post on an annual basis. I was just
Right.
curious about where those are posted.
Yeah, which policy, say that again?
Sure, 2370.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think I had a note somewhere.
I was just curious about, as a district, where do we typically post? I mean, I know we have catalogs, is it on the website for each building, I'm just curious about how we do that.
Time of registration, yeah, I had that question too.
Right, this is one that, we have a couple different requirements, and some of them are under, there's one with related to curriculum, is under the, CNI department. This one, to be honest, I don't think it's there yet, I think it's gonna be coming up.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to, basically, when we do that, I'll work with, Joyce and Lisa and whoever, we'll try to figure out what's the most appropriate place.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to still now, for example, say we're using the Common Core, right? We
Yeah.
have to tell them that every year, too. We have to decide every year, actually, and then tell
Yeah.
them.
So I do have a draft. Krista McCumber prepared a draft of what needs to go onto the web for me. So now it's just a matter of following
Putting it
through.
there,
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I was also interested in policy 2460.03, the independent educational evaluation. Is this new, or do we have a history?
Right, so this is all, of course, federal law,
Yeah.
or in some cases state. And we currently do not have this in policy. It's
Okay.
just, we follow the DPI guidelines, but it's recommended that we actually put it in policy.
Gotcha. And do we have those kinds of requests very frequently?
No,
Yeah.
very seldom.
Okay, that's what I had thought. And then I'd like to move to policies, I don't even know, 5111, .01, and then also .03. So these are the, ESA, ESSA, the homeless students, and then the children and youth in foster care. And the language of the policy, used the word barriers. That as a district, we had to ensure that our policies and structures were not creating barriers. And so I just thought that was an interesting choice of words. And I would assume that then charges us as a district to, reviewing any and all policies and structures seems like a heavy lift. But I'm also mindful, for instance, that's a big piece of our strategic plan, so it just seemed like a large word covering a lot of territory. So I'm just curious about how we're gonna move forward with that. You don't have to answer that tonight. I was just interested in the choice of words there in that policy. So, I don't know what else to do with that, but just I'm interested to see functionally, right?
Yeah. I think what you said is so true, the fact that it is a point of emphasis, it's part of our strategic plan. And so as far as our practices, it's something we're very, very conscious of. And so in that respect, having it in policy, I think is a good thing, as a reminder.
Okay.
As far as to make sure that none of our policies contain those barriers, well, partly that is why we hired Neola, to make sure that all of our written policies are written in a language as well
Okay.
that support
Okay.
that.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, I'm good.
Maybe,
Go ahead.
So when we use that word in policy, so for instance, when we were looking at sharing healthcare information across the borders to all healthcare providers, so any ER you walked into, you could do that. The word we used were barriers, so what are the barriers to that? And that made us, as a group, document the barriers. So, one of the things this will require is some serious thought process about what are the barriers that you have, and then you have to remove them. So you can't just remove them. It also is saying kind of subtly, you have to figure out what they are and identify it. So, I actually kind of like that, only because I've seen it used, for that purpose before. Otherwise, if you said shall not impede, similar language, then you're not proactively looking at what could be a barrier. And I'm not saying that necessarily that would happen, but I'm saying this language should encourage that, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, and they do list very specific examples of the kinds of things where schools might keep homeless students out, but for this language. So, I'm really comfortable with the language. I think it's.
Thank you. And then I had one last question with policy 5341, the emergency medical authorization. Is there anything in that policy that's different from our current practice?
No, because that's the only addition here is the reference to these administrative guidelines and a cross-reference to another policy. And that was just a recommendation that it be added. This is what we do now.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right.
Well,
Yes, correct.
I think it was, again, to update this in relation to make sure that we're HIPAA compliant in terms of the medical information. And then also state law compliant, because the state law is different from HIPAA, so, I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah, it said it was basically just to provide a cross-reference and to provide guidelines for more comprehensive identification of relevant policies. That's the total
Just
reason.
technical, okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, I'm done.
Good questions, thank you.
I read them.
It's nice to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
I read you read it.
That'd be on policy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask about 8330.
About which one?
8330?
That's right, 8330.
Okay,
So on 8330, student records,
okay.
Yeah, if you go to, and we should pull that up and then
Alright.
go to, they're on page numbers here, something like that is.
under K, under.
K,
the
that's
list.
right, K.
Says directory information shall not be provided to any organization for profit-making purposes.
Okay.
And we had a discussion of also adding or direct marketing. Because a couple of years ago, in Green Bay area, School Choice Wisconsin did a full records request from a bunch of different districts where they asked height, weight, photographs, all that stuff, and we trust that Dan would allow those. We wanna make sure that he's, or anybody who sits in that chair, has policy behind not allowing that to happen. Because there's so many, it's so easy to become a nonprofit that all these people are nonprofits now. And so if you say it wasn't for profit making purposes per se, but.
And
Well-
we did point out that the policy says that the superintendent may release that information, so he's not required to, and we know that Dan, or at least we changed it to say may, it did say, will. The Dan and other superintendents would choose not to release it under those circumstances, but Jeff's point was that it would be stronger if we had it in our policy. What made us step back was we were afraid we'd be eliminating something, there'd been unintended consequences to putting that in there, so we didn't choose to put it in at the time, but we did say we'd bring it up, so thank you for remembering that. If we wanted to add or for direct marketing, we were trying to think, because frankly, we couldn't really think of any good examples, but we thought there might be some.
Yeah, I mean, marketing means selling something, so
Right.
for profit, so it's already covered as the profit.
Well,
And
no,
marketing,
because-
I don't know what
You
it
can
is.
see marketing something that's not for profit.
Yeah, those schools are
It's like School Choice
nonprofit.
is a nonprofit.
What were they
Yeah.
planning to do with the information?
Recruit-
That's-
Enroll people,
recruit-
enroll
people
people
for-
into their
for
school
voucher
that's
schools.
not for
That's how
profit.
schools
That's right.
And there is a reason to put it in policy, because, rather than just a superintendent's choice,
Right.
because you get into legal, the superintendent has made a choice just based on some information that
Right.
isn't laid out in policy. Then somebody gives you a request, you may
Right.
have to treat them, the court would rule, maybe.
And, well, a court could
you'd have
rule
to-
that the policy
yeah.
is not legal also, so if they wanted to take it that far, but basically, when this happened, I think they backed off and didn't
Yeah.
keep pushing it because schools were upset about it, and they weren't ready for it. And I haven't heard much about it since then, so I don't know, we just couldn't decide at our meeting whether we should add, for,
We just wanted to protect.
Profit making
I thought we
or
needed to
marketing.
protect the superintendent,
right, that was,
whoever that might be, from
That was
Yeah,
the reason for adding it.
Good
And I was gonna try to look and see what other districts have done, and I honestly haven't had time to do that. But I'm guessing it might not help, because I'm guessing we might not find much, which doesn't mean we don't wanna address it, so I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts, or is that something you wanna think about? Again, this is a first read, so if you wanna think about it for next
What-
time. and-
what- I'm sorry.
Jeff, were you gonna propose where you would add it in here?
We would add it right after K.
Where it says, you see where it says,
3/4 of the way down.
directory information, and then it has all those letters? the
Yep.
list?
Yeah.
Then the
Yep.
sentence right below K, where it says, directory information shall not be provided to any organization for profit-making or direct marketing purposes. We were thinking we could add or direct marketing. And the only reason we pulled back, as I said, is because we thought, well, maybe there'd be some things that might be beneficial, and we just didn't know if we'd catch something that we didn't mean to by doing that, but we couldn't think of anything really, so.
The only
Yeah.
related thing that I would say is, when I worked in the residence halls, we released information, this is a lifetime ago, when the residence halls didn't provide loft beds, but people wanted them. And it actually was kind of a service to help them research the companies and make that information available, to have that be information directly provided to families, because it's something they wanted, and we know they wanted, and they kept asking us for it. So, just on the face of it, provided to any organization for profit-making purposes, I'm just thinking of the loft bed thing as an example of where actually it was kind of great to have that relationship. And so I'm sort of, as you're
Yeah.
thinking about it, it's like, we may not here be able to determine what you were just saying about
Right.
for marketing purposes, but there also could be a downside for profit-making purposes if it was some service that we know our families wanted access to.
We felt-
Loft beds, which is kind
Yeah.
of harmless, I mean, in the
We felt
sense
that
of-
way, the option would be, we could give them the information rather than giving the company their information. That's,
But
Through
it just
Infinite
depends who
Campus.
bears the expense, like, we like the
Well,
expense
through
being
Infinite
borne
Campus,
by the
right.
profit-making company to print and mail the stuff to the.
but if I'm a
like,
parent, I might be pretty annoyed that I'm getting all this advertising, so
It
that's
has,
the
right,
balance,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
But, so I'm just thinking about this as very broad.
I'm not,
That was our
frankly, I'm
problem
not
with it.
sure.
That's exactly right. Well, you're, you're.
Point
I
out,
was just gonna,
Susan.
again, this is a place where, you can kind of feel that different people have been writing these documents, and it starts to fall apart when that happens. Because if you look just before inspection of information collection instrument, the sentence just in front of that says, the district shall not permit the collection, disclosure, or use of, that means you can't give it out either, if you know that these people are gonna use it for these things, collected from students for the purpose of marketing or for selling that information, or otherwise providing the information to others for that purpose. So, truthfully, it doesn't matter if they're profit or nonprofit, if they're using it for these purposes. So, the language that reflects the purpose is actually better than using language that says,
Where is that language that you're reading?
maybe
Because this is talking specifically directory information, I'm just wondering if you're talking about the same thing.
I'm
That's-
director information,
Okay.
I'm under, just in front of inspection. I mean, I'm looking at the copy with agreement.
Oh, okay, the inspection of information collection instrument, gotcha.
Okay, so, I was focusing more on the prohibiting purposes versus specific entities. So I was more comfortable with it once I saw that language.
Yeah.
It does seem strange that they would just pick this.
This is a little different, it's a little broader, I mean, it includes that, but it includes more than directory stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
But, so technically, if you had a profit-making group that was marketing or selling the information, you couldn't disclose it. It wouldn't matter if you're profit or nonprofit, we're looking at the purpose.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
So Karen, we talked about that, and my response to that was, we have Infinite Campus. So if somebody comes to us with an offer, that would benefit everybody. We can Infinite Campus out, and we have control over the message, right?
That's good.
Because otherwise, if we give the loft people, and then they all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, take our information and send out the no-tell motel that they also own, then we don't have control of that, and we're like, what the heck, right?
That's
Because they have it forever then. So if it comes, they can come to us each time they have an offer that we can't, and then we have discretion to say, okay, that is good for everybody, that isn't, you know, stuff like that, so.
Yep.
Right on.
That makes sense.
And we were talking, just not to belabor the point, but things have changed over time with, you know, technology. Back in the day where our primary communication was through, you know, like mail correspondence and so on, we would get many more requests from places like, you know, selling senior or class rings, you know, senior portraits, that
Sure.
sort of thing, where it was then preferable to give the directory that information so they could bear the expense of the mailing, like you said. Now with electronic communication, it's kind of, we get very few requests.
Agreed, yeah.
So if somebody has some ideas to make this better, we're game. Again,
I was listening here, Jeff wanted to propose, like, officially adding that language we leave here tonight.
Do we need to
feeling that we're gonna
propose
do
that,
it.
or how do you wanna do that?
Well, if people, this is the first reading, so if it goes into the second reading, it'll be worded just like this, unless there is an interest. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, you can amend it at the time, but I guess it'd be helpful for us to know ahead of time if somebody thinks, I mean, we didn't put it in there because we weren't sure we should, and we thought we would talk about it with the
Just
board, and
talk
see if the
about
board had the same concern, and whether we should or should not put it in there, or maybe everybody needs more time to think about it.
I liked it when you brought it up, and I think we are in kind of the era now where we can disseminate whatever information we want to. We don't have to provide our students and families contact. I'm comfortable with adding the phrase that you talked about. I'm still looking at it on underneath K here, that next sentence underneath there.
So, adding to the sentence
Directory
that's there,
information shall not be provided to any organization for profit-making or marketing purposes.
or market, okay.
I was comfortable with
Anybody
that.
else have a thought on that,
I would-
concern with it, or?
Sure, I think at this point I'd be comfortable, having it stay with the policy committee and, over time, if you're able to contact a few other districts to see what they have or haven't also decided, just a little check-in with a few other districts to see, just as another
Well,
point
this
of
will come back for
reference.
second reading before we have another.
Yeah, it'll come back, and it's a few weeks, so I'd have time to do a little bit of checking with them too.
So why don't I make a motion that we add or marketing purposes?
Well, it's not on for action tonight,
Oh.
so we can't, but this was
Or to
just to
send
get.
it back to the committee
This was
for
just,
adding
well, the
that?
committee's not meeting again, so it's not, well, I don't.
I
maybe
think
we're
you have
okay,
two
but-
options
yeah.
procedurally. One is that next meeting, when you, it will be up for action.
Right.
You can vote at that time to send it back to committee,
Right.
or you can make a motion for an amendment.
Right, I think that's the cleanest way to do it, and then meanwhile, I will try to look something up between now and then, or make a couple
we'll
phone
do some
calls
research on it, which is
Thank
what,
you.
and see.
usually
yeah.
on first read, if somebody makes a recommendation, we'll go back and really review that. And again, if it's one of those complicated things, we'll even call legal counsel on it. So we'll make sure we have information for you. What other, if we can find anybody else who has anything different, we look under the other, Neola, One, McFarland.
So I appreciate the point that, you know, that you were considering. It's a mindful one.
Well,
Yeah.
we didn't have an answer either.
Yeah.
You don't
But
know.
I would just procedurally like to point out, on the first reading, it is appropriate, it is okay to make a motion to amend it, because it's business before the board. We can't approve it, but we can make a motion to amend it.
So that the
But
next
you
time it
can't
comes
vote
back,
on
it
it.
would come back
Yeah, you
amended?
can. You can.
If you do
Because-
it that way, would it mean that the next time it comes back
I'm
for a
not sure
second
that's
look,
true.
That's
we
right,
would
it
be
would
seeing
come
the
back.
amended version?
You'd amend that document, and then it would come back for us a second
Sit
look.
up for
Because we're not taking action on it, we're just amending
It may
it. We're just changing the word.
That, I would argue that's action, I'd have to get clarification before I
Sure.
think
Motion
that's
is
okay.
action.
Yeah,
That's right.
Making a
So we
motion
can
and
only
voting
discuss it.
is
it-
action.
How's it agendized? I'm not looking, I'm under, I've got 5 tons of policy.
Yeah, no,
It's a
I think-
it's a discussion
It's a
item, but
discussion
in the
item.
Then we
discussion,
can't do it,
yes,
unless we put under.
That's
It's,
fine.
it's totally appropriate, and I think just as effective to get a thumbs up from how many people wanna do it. So I guess let me do that right now.
regardless.
How many people are inclined to want to add that language unless we find that there are reasons not to, just to see? Okay, so there is definite interest,
That's right.
that's helpful.
Great.
That's the point of a first read, and that gives us something so we can
Okay.
come up with more information. And then this same, because we won't be meeting in this same policy, in this same format, will come to you at the next reading, but if someone wants to make that that amendment, I would say the best thing is to send it ahead of time, so we know that now that we've had that discussion. And everybody knows it and is thinking about it, and then you don't have to for something that easy, but I think it's helpful, and it's it's courteous to the board if we know someone's gonna make that amendment, to send it so that it can be in board docs as a possible amendment, and then people know to think about it, and you guys can do your own research as well. It doesn't just have to be us, and see if you wanna find out what other people are doing, give it more thought. You know, the example that, got thrown out was, well, what if the Urban League wanted information about our students to talk about specific programs and things, and we don't give it, and then that's where we thought, well, we would probably just disseminate that information to the students who'd be interested, rather than give families information out.
Yeah, Jeff's point about it.
So that was the point, so, yeah, but anyway, so,
I
further
think
thought.
the reason that it was good for Peter to clarify whether we could do that tonight is because then we don't have to come back and relive the whole stinking conversation the next time the board meets. And we've had it now, we've had 10 minutes in it, we all are in agreement, next time it's gonna be, I have to remember who's gonna make the amendment, what was that for again, and like have to relive the whole thing. Where I think coming back on the second read is something we have consensus on, that I appreciate why you brought that up, because we'll have to spend 10 minutes the next time talking about whether we're gonna
Well,
change
not
if we wanted to-
necessarily, somebody
We'll
could just
have
make
the
an
draft
amendment.
language
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, okay. Any other questions or those policies? Then,
Anything else? Okay.
I guess that's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that list of policies.
Certainly.
That takes us to item N, our future meetings, and you should have access to our June 24th revised meeting schedule, as well as the meetings that are actually listed under that item. Is there anything in particular you wanna highlight, or?
Well, initially, after the board approved all the regular meeting schedule, then we came back with a draft of some special meetings and workshops on several nights of, for topics that we had discussed that we'd like to do. And from the discussion was, well, that's a lot of extra meetings, might we consider doing some of these on the same night as a regular meeting, prior to? And so that's where this came from, was an attempt to not add nights, but just time beforehand. And so, I guess this is a tentative list that Jennifer and I have put together that we would like to do, but if there's, feedback about, some of those, now would be the time.
I'm gonna be gone the 19th.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, and I wanted to make sure that we actually approved board meetings, and then we made 2 changes for the June board meetings, and as a board, we approved those. And there's an implication in the policy that as a board, we need to approve these, and one of the reasons I think we should is because it kind of makes us all say, okay, I've checked these dates. Overtly, I can or cannot be here, and I wanna make you aware of that, rather than to have surprises later. So it helps to, technically, I think we're supposed to approve changes to the board schedule.
To regular meetings, so special meetings, there's, statutes are covered completely differently, so,
You're right.
but,
We're
Yeah,
not-
and I think,
we're
but
not
certainly,
changing-
we don't wanna schedule a meeting if we can't have board members attend.
Right.
Right.
We want, and that's why it's an opportunity to communicate.
And because the the regular board meetings is where the public comes to see our business,
Yeah. Right.
we want to
Right.
take changes of those serious, but adding a workshop or whatever is not.
yeah, and I think
It's up to the
it allows us
board
more
president to set the
flexibility.
schedule.
Yeah, and just for the record, I did make a mistake for tonight. I didn't realize, I knew that we had to have the board approve changes in dates for regular meetings. I didn't realize that the times was included, and so when you see in this document,
Yeah.
what was approved was that it says regular meetings will be at 7, closed session at 6 if necessary.
Oh.
So by us going at 5:30 tonight, should have had approval. I apologize for that. I think it's the first time we've ever changed
So,
that.
in these upcoming ones, these are just special workshops, so they're not covered by.
Right.
I
this.
didn't see anything that started us
Yeah.
at 5:30.
Yeah.
The only addition is I will do my best to make it here, but those are work days for me, and the commute from downtown to here is a little challenging at that time of day. So just
Mhm.
going into it knowing that I will do my best to make it here on time, but
Sure.
if I'm late, it's not being rude.
Yeah.
And Carrie,
Just
you're
cavalierly strolling
You're-
in,
right,
because
right.
I'm busting trying to get here.
You're referring to the workshop
I
dates and the
both,
special
I see
meetings.
2 days, 5
I
PM on
gotcha.
the 19th and 5:30
Yes.
PM on August 9th, and those are
Right.
both gonna be a challenge for me. So just know I'm trying to get here and not
Sure.
just strolling around having a mocha frappe on the way.
Well, if you are, bring more, okay, all right. Bring additional. But seriously, are there other concerns about any of the meeting dates or times as listed, especially for the summer months?
I think if that's the consensus, I think in general, this is not a good practice, because we're looking at a 2-hour workshop followed by a board meeting. We know what happens when we do that. It's not great, but I think given that people's preference seem to be to do it this way, I'm fine with it. I'm not, it's fine. I think as we get into the year though, I would hope we wouldn't have many of these, because I think we've seen that
Yeah.
it doesn't work too well.
And the other thing I'm concerned about is, I think you've done a really nice job of trying to schedule 2 hours, but here's what we know on board goals. We scheduled 2 hours and we didn't get done. We didn't even get done with one. So, sometimes, let's go ahead and see how it works. But if we start finding that we're not, so board goals, 2 hours before a regular board meeting, if we don't get through that, shame on us, but, then we may have to rethink trying to do the time before board.
We're gonna have a process.
And-
Plus,
right.
it doesn't allow, if you need to do other things in closed session, it closes you out. So,
Sure. And I think part of the process, and I think Susan Fox might have alluded to this, but part of our process during that workshop will be to frame what we want to accomplish. So that has not, yeah, so we'll see where that goes. So I have a question, for the board. Susan Fox, you had brought up that, perhaps doing the 2 hours and then a regular board meeting may be, a healthy dose, right, of an evening. So I think part of the challenge as we look at meetings, workshops, and then special board meetings is the balance between getting our work done and attending to our duties and having regular board meetings. And I don't wanna go negative, so I'm trying to keep this in a positive light. I think this board has tried to explore options and scheduling and I'm concerned a little bit because there are pieces this past year that we said we were going to do and we did not carry through on. And so that tension between wanting to accomplish our work, but not always wanting to commit the time. And so, I think this topic is just going to keep coming around and back to us. And we really, need to be thoughtful about how to get the work done. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but I think that's a piece of what we tried to do with our schedule, especially for the summer.
Sure, no, and I appreciate it for the summer. I'm one of the people who has repeatedly said, I think we do need more meetings during the school. We do need to agree to more check-ins, but that's my personal opinion, because I feel like when it's bookended like that, it is an issue. And I'm just gonna bring up too, we also just started the superintendent evaluation process, and we need to sometime have a time
that's
this
not on
summer,
right.
that's not on here. And that needs to be a separate
Yeah.
other thing, where we review it first, and then we go through that whole process and set up another schedule. That process also will necessitate some additional special meetings during the year, I think, more likely than tacking them on to board meetings again, so.
Yeah.
But we committed to that, and that's one where I am gonna argue for, schedule those extra meetings, because we need to commit the time. I'm willing to, that's my compromise for the summer, I won't complain about it.
Well,
But it works for me, but,
Yeah, and we'll certainly share that out soon, what we're working on. Right now, I have those bookmarked at regular meeting nights, like a closed session, just beforehand, but I agree we need to talk about that. But that means more meetings, and so you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on that.
Well, and the problem with that is, we've already tied up July 19th and August 9th, so we aren't even gonna go over that draft of that evaluation as a board until the middle of August.
That's not okay.
And then meet with the superintendent after that, and then it puts us behind the
Right.
8 ball again.
And we're
It's not-
supposed to-
We're supposed to
That's
be doing that
correct.
by July, really.
and we're supposed to
Yeah.
start the next process.
Right.
So that's a quick example.
So I don't know
right,
if you have
of-
room during I just looked again to see this, it's board goals, but maybe to the July 19th one, maybe an hour of that's gotta be, I don't know what you had planned for that. If you have a whole process plan, this wouldn't work, but maybe an hour of that should be that. And then, an hour should be, what do we wanna do with board goals? I don't wanna step on your toes, cause you might have had a process plan, if that's the case. Far be it, I don't wanna infringe on that, but.
Would that be the kind of thing we could do in closed session? I mean, even as this is coming out of my mouth, I'm
No.
like, yeah, can we do it in closed session at 9:00 that night, the 19th, July 19th, to do the superintendent performance stuff?
You can.
Ken?
Because, I mean, we're already here,
Is that really gonna be a 2-hour meeting?
Okay, so you're talking about starting at 5:30.
5:00, I think, on the 19th.
5:00 on the
Five.
19th.
5 o'clock on the 19th,
Yeah.
and going until the board meeting, you're presuming that the board meeting ends at 10.
Pretty sure.
I said 9
Or
when I,
nine.
I said
Yeah.
9 when
Yeah,
I
it's
made that up
okay.
out of thin air.
It's only 35
Let's
now,
do that.
so
Yeah, we're
it's
doing
possible.
great tonight. Let's, we've got,
I mean, really, you know, not
I'm
knowing
not
what.
gonna support
down there.
starting a meeting and a superintendent evaluation to review at 9 o'clock at night.
The reason I
Knowing that
suggested it
this
is
board
because we'd
doesn't
already
function
committed
well
4 hours.
after
I'm sorry,
Right.
go ahead and
8:30.
finish and then I'll finish my thought. The reason I proposed it is because we aren't starting a new topic, we are reconvening to confirm what has already been established in a 4-hour meeting we had, I believe, last week. So then we can come back and check that,
Right.
okay, what we all decided was gonna be in the compilation document is in fact in the compilation document. So to me, that's quite different to check in at 9 o'clock, take a public, review of the thing with all of us, instead of it just being an attachment on Board Docs. And so I'm comfortable proposing that we could do that, not knowing what else you had intended for the board meeting that night, but presuming that there were some legal things we would have to sign off on to do. Because the other alternatives are to delay, and get to September and be behind again with that process. So I'm
okay.
Plus it stays that
open
short.
to a lengthy commitment that night,
Policy approvals,
if it means we can keep all of our work on track.
but it looks, but right now it looks like a fairly short meeting, so it might be doable.
That's where I have a placeholder right now.
Okay,
Again,
It looks like an
I'm
hour
not gonna
meeting.
support that. I think this board, isn't at their best.
what's
during
your
that period of
suggestion
time.
instead, Susan, for how we can keep the
it's-
superintendent thing on track?
If it's 6 to 1, then that's the way it goes, Carrie. That's why we have 7 on the board.
Okay.
Well, she was just asking if you had another.
Cause I was
Yeah.
willing to entertain a different suggestion, but if your suggestion is no with no alternative, I guess I'm gonna go with the alternative.
I'm asking Jennifer to come back with us, understanding that we meet on we try and meet on Wednesdays. We try and schedule that time. And it's not just to look at what we've already done. We have to basically assimilate and approve a schedule for going forward next year so that we can finish this project in a way that's responsible.
I just didn't hear you saying how else we could get it done, so that's why I was asking.
Well, I think
So-
at this meeting related to that topic, it would literally just be, as Carrie said, reviewing the form, would you get, did I capture the consensus? That's all that is. So I'd still, again, and this is up to you, because again, you know, we have planned from 5 to 7. My preference might be to do it right at 5, so we get out of the way, because to me, it could be a 20-minute thing, or a half hour most. But if that messes up what you have planned, then I'd be in favor of going ahead and doing it at 9.
So at this
Looking like a
point,
short meeting, so you guys
Thank you.
figure it out, and,
Okay,
in
so
my opinion.
my suggestion is to do it at 5, or 5:30, so that Carrie can be there, because I think it's
Oh,
important
that's-
that all 7 of us here,
I won't be there.
and
Jeff's already told us he can't be here that night.
at all.
Right,
That's the first thing he said when he looked at
Right.
the list like
That's right.
20
I'm on
minutes ago.
vacation. So I would recommend you guys get together at 1 and go through the night.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I'm game.
Yeah, that went, yeah.
all right, so at this point, Dan and I will have further discussion about that agenda and that date. All right, thank you.
Kept the pen, I don't know whose pen that was, but it's down there somewhere.
I'm just gonna ask, is there any other discussion around future meeting dates? Just 'cause I have to, okay. All right. Thank you, though. I appreciate the conversation. Absolutely.
I don't know yet, probably to the county meeting.
All right,
Okay.
so do you
I'd
want
like
We-
to move to reconvene in the closed session and continue the discussion, completion of consideration of the enumerated subjects of business. Do I need to say which ones
Subject C,
we didn't get to yet, that we have to go back in there to do?
Under-
just say it is enumerated
under
under
C.
item C.
Yeah,
Cause,
Under item C.
Just
so
say
just
it as a-
continue enumerated under item C,
Perfect.
yep.
There you go.
cause I know which ones we didn't do yet.
I'll second it.
Thank
I
you.
was gonna move adjournment, because I forgot.
Thank
Well, yeah,
you.
we'll be on already.
Roll call vote?
Roll
Yes.
call vote, beginning with Dean.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
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 We are now reconvening into closed session.